A roll call.
Committee members Edgerton, Hintermeister.
Here.
Hutchison. Here. Glines.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Davenport. Brown.
Here. Thank you. We've done that. So report from the chair. I have just a couple items to mention. Now here it is. Ed is not here today, but do want to note that he is now on board with us through June 30th of 2018. Then I failed to mention previously that Rich Constantine, Morgan Hill Council member, is now chair of the Governing Board Committee. And Jerry, this is more a question for you than anything else. Is the Pacheco Creek dam that's being proposed by the Santa Clara Valley Water District? Can you, during your report, give us just a thumbnail on what that might mean to us, for us?
Okay, sure. I'll do my best.
Okay.
I'm Ed Light, or Diet Ed.
Right, okay, good.
I'll do the best I can.
And that's it for me. Does any other board member have anything that they'd like to tell us about for the good of all?
Yes, I do. Just a quick note for those who are not aware. I've changed jobs, so I'm over at the San Jose Conservation Corps and Charter School now, and I'm the External Affairs Manager there.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, so moving on to public comments, items not on the agenda. Doug, do you have anything you want to say? We're not doing anything about redistricting.
I got my picture in the paper once, that's enough.
Okay. Then if I could have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the May 4 meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any noes or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. And item number 2, presentation by the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, Coyote Valley Landscape, that we have it all in color. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Did I just hit the arrow?
Oh, no.
Okay.
And should we fine Alex for not being here tonight?
Yeah, maybe. So my name is Golly Basone. I'm Resource Management Specialist with the Open Space Authority, and I'm going to be presenting the Coyote Valley Landscape Linkage Report that we put out June 15th. So in biology, most ecology recognizes that landscape linkages are really important to connect habitats, to protect from habitat fragmentation. And so because of this, there's been a lot of planning around that, and Coyote Valley has been identified as the essential opportunity for habitat connectivity in a number of state and regional plans, starting with the California Essential Habitat Connectivity Project, which was statewide, and then filtering down at a little more fine scale level to the Bay Area-wide Conservation Lands Network and Bay Area Critical Linkages Project, and then even more fine scale into the Santa Cruz Mountains Conceptual Area Protection Plan, as well as being identified as the critical linkage within the Santa Clara Valley HCP and CCP. So the Open Space Authority had its own planning process for prioritization of the kind of conservation work that we were going to do, and Coyote Valley was identified in our Santa Clara Valley Green Print as being a really high priority for our agency. So just to kind of orient you, we're looking south from San Jose to Morgan Hill, and the area in the star is Coyote Valley. Looking On the west side is the Santa Cruz Mountains, and the east side is the Diablo Range. And so this picture really shows you how close the two mountain ranges come in Coyote Valley as a connection for animals to get from one side to the other. I think this picture also illustrates how if we lose the connection, the Santa Cruz Mountains becomes an island, and animals really become confined to just staying in the Santa Cruz Mountains and are not able to disperse. The other key takeaway is that the conservation community has invested over $3.5 billion in just land conservation within the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range, and that is just through land acquisition. So that doesn't even count land restoration or public access. So by connecting these two habitats, we're really protecting a huge investment that's been done to date. There's been a lot of research in Coyote Valley because it's been identified as such an important linkage, and it really began with the De Anza College Wildlife Corridor Technician Program. They identified that a lot of animals were actually using Coyote Valley and were found near a lot of the infrastructure for car infrastructure, such as culverts. We received a grant from CDFW and worked with Pathways for Wildlife to do a linkage assessment study where we set up cameras within Coyote Valley to see if we can actually capture wildlife moving through and find out what pathways they're using. And from that study, we found that there actually is a number of wildlife species that are using Coyote Valley, including bobcats and foxes and coyotes, deer, things like that. As part of that study, we partnered with UC Berkeley, and they did ground squirrel genetic research where they tested the DNA of ground squirrels on both sides of Highway 101 and found that there was actually 101 was serving as a barrier to genetic flow between ground squirrels. There's been also, a number of studies in progress, including the burrowing owl and tricolored blackbird study, which the Valley Habitat Agency is a part of, and they're looking at Coyote Valley. And then most recently, the bobcat and gray fox radio collar study. So that kicked off in May. We're actually radio collaring bobcats. We haven't found gray foxes. The slide here is from one of the, actually it shows three, it's a clip of 3 of the bobcats. We're getting 5-minute data on this, and so that's going to give us even more information. And so, as I mentioned, there's been sort of regional plans for Coyote Valley. And so we were, discussing how to conserve this area, and we thought that we really needed to come up with a cohesive vision that we could share with people, that we could share with policymakers, that we could share with our colleagues and other agencies in order to be able to have a conversation about it and be able to articulate why this landscape is so important. And so what we did is we partnered with the Conservation Biology Institute, and we convened a science technical advisory team of over a dozen scientists in different disciplines. Most of them that were local to the area, some that were just experts in the field of connectivity, and decided to come up with this compelling vision that is outlined in the report. And so this is a photo of Coyote Ridge, standing on Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve, looking west towards the Santa Cruz Mountains. We wanted the vision to include 21st century science, so really looking at climate change and resiliency and how animals can adapt to those factors, as well as thinking of a more ecological corridor, and so that's why it's called a linkage instead of a corridor, because a corridor really makes you think of just a small swath between two habitat patches, and we really wanted an ecologically functioning landscape that would provide for things like daily travel, migration, dispersal, and then adaptation to climate change. And so we used focal species in our analysis. The focal species were pulled from the Bay Area Critical Linkages Project, since that went through such an extensive process. And then we added a few species based on local knowledge, such as the Swainson's hawk, which has the only nesting pair in Coyote Valley, so we felt that was important to include. We looked at the historical ecology as the basis for our vision. One of our advisors was from the San Francisco Estuary Institute, and they wrote a Coyote Creek watershed historical ecology report. And so we used the historical ecology as the basis for what the landscape could look like with restoration. As you can see, the historical ecology included a 1,000-acre freshwater marsh, willow, riparian habitat, wet meadows, some ponds, oak woodlands, and oak savannas, so really high-quality habitat, and a lot of habitat that's really rare right now, particularly the marsh and wet meadow habitat. So actually, looking at the map of the historical ecology, one thing that became apparent to us is that there's a lot of features in the north that aren't found elsewhere in Coyote Valley, and that it made sense to focus on that area because that's the irreplaceable area. We wouldn't be able to replicate a huge wetland elsewhere in Coyote Valley. We need to work with what's there and what's unique. So we focused our attention in northern Coyote Valley. It also happens to be where the mountain ranges are in the closest proximity. There's larger parcels with fewer transactions, so just from an implementation standpoint, it's a lot easier to implement. It's connected and anchored to open space that's already protected. And it includes the confluence of Fisher Creek with Coyote Creek, and animals often like to travel along riparian corridors, and so being able to get them from one side to the other along a riparian corridor is really important. And it also just had really complex terrain, habitat, soil types, and hydrological features, such as Laguna Seca, which makes it really important for preservation for climate change adaptation. So this is a map of the Coyote Valley landscape linkage. It should look familiar in the sense of the historical ecology. There's some familiar features, including the freshwater wetland, the wet meadows, the willow riparian areas. Obviously, the landscape has changed, and so recognizing that agriculture is very important in the valley, we included an area for wildlife-friendly agriculture, and that seems to work really well for the bird species, which are currently very popular in Coyote Valley. There's a lot of birding hotspots and a lot of raptor species and nesting species that are found there. And then kind of mimicking an oak woodland, we included an area of an oak woodland / orchard as another linkage that provides cover, so that we don't want to just have one location where animals are getting across the valley. We want to provide some additional locations in case something happens, or different animals like different locations. And so we see this mosaic of oak woodland and orchards to fulfill that. And then with the wet meadow areas, those are really going to be key to groundwater recharge and improving the water quality and flood protection of San Jose. So we also started to see multiple benefits of the restoration beyond just the wildlife and the habitat. And then I just have some pictures of sort of what could be in Coyote Valley, or what is in Coyote Valley. So this is what a nice wet meadow could look like. And then this is a little photo of a coyote puppy using one of the culverts from our 2016 study. This is a photo of Laguna Seca taken almost exactly 100 years later. In the photo in 1916, there are actually dredging Laguna Seca. If you zoom in, you can see it. And then with the rains, it really showed us this year that it still wants to be a wetland. It still is a wetland, and has a really high potential for habitat restoration of rare habitat. This photo was taken in Coyote Valley. It was a willow grove in 1917, sort of as it was being cut down, as an example of some of the habitat that we could restore and that would be really high quality, particularly for birds. This photo was taken in the authority's Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, and it's an example of a grassland and oak savanna. And so just thinking about this type of habitat being expanded elsewhere in the valley, and that could provide really great habitat for burrowing owls and badgers, both of which are found in Coyote Valley. As I mentioned, a mosaic of wildlife-friendly agriculture is really good for the bird species that are currently found there and supports our local economy. And in particular with the birds, the tricolored blackbirds, which do forage in the ag fields and are a candidate listed species. And then the oak woodlands and orchards could provide a lot of cover, which were really important for animal movement, and oaks in general are just really high quality habitat for a variety of species. All the efforts that we put into it really don't matter if we're not trying to deal with the barriers. So we could conserve all the land that we want, but if we can't move them across Highway 101, Monterey Highway, and Santa Teresa Road, we're not going to be able to let them disperse. And so the report also looked at the current infrastructure, how we could improve it, as well as where we could put in new infrastructure. And I think the radio collar study that we're doing now will really help us validate some of our assumptions with that. I wanted to mention that the Valley Habitat Agency, we have a subcommittee, Wildlife Corridor Working Group. It's not just for Coyote Valley, although it seems we've had some focus on Coyote Valley. And it includes representatives from different agencies and organizations working on wildlife corridors in Santa Clara County, the Nature Conservancy, the Santa Clara Valley Water District, obviously the Valley Habitat Agency, Peninsula Open Space Trust, a lot of folks actually. Caltrans came to our last meeting, which was really helpful. In Coyote Valley, the focus has really been on improving the permeability of current infrastructure. So we're working with Caltrans right now to clear out block culverts. We were able to successfully clear out one and monitor before and after, and showed that a coyote came through about a month later. And so now we're giving them that data, and they're using it to justify cleaning out additional culverts. As I mentioned earlier, there is the co-benefit of water resources, and so the Open Space Authority is partnering with the Santa Clara Valley Water District. The first phase of the study found some important findings that Coyote Valley provides for natural groundwater recharge, that some areas can support additional stormwater capture, which could mitigate downstream flood risk, which is really timely with the flood that happened in San Jose, and that water resource enhancement could really dovetail nicely with habitat restoration and an expanded riparian corridor. So we could get hundreds of acres of new wetlands, wet meadows, and valley oak savannas if we do some hydrology restoration and give benefits to the city of San Jose residents. That can also improve water quality. So there's a long list of recommendations in the report. I just kind of go through the bullet points. Working with willing sellers to conserve property. Post just purchased in June a 30-acre parcel, which was the same parcel that 400,000 square foot warehouse was slated for development, and they're actively engaging with several landowners in the area. Initiating restoration and management plans, as I mentioned, improving the permeability of existing infrastructure until we could put in new infrastructure, and that takes a while. So starting to plan, design, and implement additional wildlife crossings. Integrating hydrologic research with ongoing research by the Water District. The Open Space Authority is partnering with the Water District to do a Phase 2 water resources study for the Coyote Creek watershed. So we're going to explore Coyote Valley in more detail and the kind of benefits that the city can get from green infrastructure. Obviously, high-speed rail is a big question mark. Once they sort of decide the alignment and whether it's embankment or viaduct can have really big effects on wildlife in Coyote Valley. So we've been working really closely with them, advocating for a viaduct option. Continuing the wildlife studies, you know, the data, Highway 17 project where they're putting in 2 new wildlife crossings was really supported by the Puma project. And so we really want the data, want it to be scientifically based and the data to really tell the story. And then outreach and education, so that's both interagency and then also with the public. And then integrating into the linkage agricultural and recreational planning. We didn't do that in this report because that takes more of an in-depth analysis, but it is an important component, and so looking at how we can integrate that into the linkage design. So in terms of next steps, we released the draft report, which I've given you guys all a copy. Wanted to make sure you knew it was a draft, and we are accepting comments until 8/31 at the end of August, and then we'll finalize it shortly after that. We've been sharing this with the scientific community, different agencies, and the public. And then we've already started working to implement the linkage design with our partners, and that's doing things like improving the permeability of existing infrastructure and working with willing landowners. This really is a multi-agency and partner effort. I've listed a few of the folks here. There really are many others. It includes nonprofits, it includes regulatory agencies, Water District, so Santa Clara County Parks and Recs, obviously the Valley Habitat Agency, VTA, so there really are a lot of players interested in this landscape. So I just wanted to, you can email me directly, or we have also email set up, linkages@openspaceauthority.org. Either way is fine, and we are accepting feedback through August 31st. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Questions, suggestions?
First of all, thank you for that presentation. I've got a sort of a comment, I guess, to start off with, and then maybe get into the questions. Just one, I can imagine for maybe a developer, a landowner in Coyote Valley taking a look at this, they're saying, that's just crazy pie in the sky stuff. But I think, you know, we need to take a look at where we were just 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago tops, and where we are today. So I want to commend you guys for the effort. I want to commend you guys for, you know, everything you've put together to move forward. If we just take a look at quickly what's happened in Coyote Valley, like I said, over the last little while, where the Open Space Authority, the Open Space Preserve is right now, that was slated for large residential housing in the 2008 Coyote Valley specific plan. Now what do you have there? You guys are looking at burrowing owls, bay checker spot butterfly habitat, and I think a few other species of special status.
Yeah, we had a California tiger salamander in our preserve as well.
Okay, well there, right? So we went from sticking large houses there to having really great habitat that we can now build on. And then also there is the recent acquisition of the Panettone site in North Coyote Valley. I think that's a pretty key acquisition. And then opportunity in a really important spot again to take a look at what can be done there. So I would say, you know, for those who are thinking maybe this is just really crazy stuff, to think again. There's, you know, if we open up our minds and our thoughts and take a look at what can be done and why it should be done, I think one of the big things that needs to be explored is the flood issue, is the water supply issue. With climate change, we saw obviously San Jose suffered dearly in the last little while, and even if they had got full warning, that's not going to stop an infrastructure you don't have. So I think that, again, we need to take a look at that value, so I really appreciate that. And then also I think the comments in the press release by John Laird and Ken Alex and the mayor really speak to those issues that I'm mentioning, essentially, you know, the importance of the work and moving forward with it. And kudos to getting those two, John and Alex, Ken Alex, to mention you guys in such high regard. That's pretty fantastic stuff. You mentioned Tanya Diamond and Ahiga Snyder's Pathway for Wildlife, their work. Now, one of those projects that was completed was the east to west linkage and along Fisher Creek, and finding out how important that was as a east-west wildlife corridor. And now they're doing the bobcat study, the bobcat collaring. And I'm just wondering, what is the status of that, and when will we get information, like preliminary reports coming out of that, or have you gotten preliminary reports coming out of that?
Sure. First, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your earlier comments. And I think with the development of Google in San Jose, I think it kind of is opening up people's eyes of like where those type of campuses should be and where open space should be. It really makes that case. As far as the bobcat study, we just started in May. We have preliminary data. We collared 8 bobcats, and that really is showing both the north-south and the east-west connection. We did have a presentation, so we're partnering with UC Santa Cruz. It's out of the Chris Wilmer's lab, who's doing the Puma project, and so he's working with a postdoc there. She spends half the time in South Africa, and so she's already there, but she did a presentation like the day before she left and gave us some preliminary findings. And then we're working with UC Santa Cruz to slowly roll that out, you know, what we can sort of share once they've done some preliminary analysis. What we are finding is, one of the things that she shared that's really interesting is that the bobcats are really going from tree to tree. And not because it's hot, because they're doing that at night as well. And so the cover piece, the restoration piece, really becomes more evident as needed in order to help them move through the landscape. So I thought that was interesting and really kind of an important finding for just having started the field work in May and already kind of getting some interesting findings. The data is downloaded every couple weeks, and so some of the bobcats were recently collared in July, so we still need to get some more data to get some more sort of scientific findings together, but we will share that. They have agreed to release that data periodically so that we're not waiting until the end.
Okay. A couple of other questions, and I thank my colleagues for allowing me to sort of dominate at this moment. What is the synergy with the county's CAP program that's moving forward? Because obviously a lot of Coyote Valley, I mean, we're talking, looking more historically than what it is today, a lot more of the farmland, obviously, right now, and as the county moves forward with the CAP program, where's the synergy between the two? Because you see there is a swath there, but I'm just wondering, has there been comments on the part of county those dealing, I mean, I know the Open Space Authority obviously is heavily involved with the CAP. I'm just thinking as they look at this plan and then looking at the CAP, the discussions are happening. Have you received comment from them on this? Where is that at?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I actually don't know. I haven't really interacted with the county on the CAP. I haven't received any comments from them. I'm not sure if they had any comments like in meetings with my colleagues, but I know that it's definitely kind of a delicate balance that the Open Space Authority and the county is trying to thread, I guess, is preserving sort of the agriculture and the local food economy, and habitat for wildlife. And so I think, making sure that those two projects are communicating with each other, especially when we get into more of the fine-scale agricultural planning that's going to happen. The other piece where the two sort of go together is working with high-speed rail and looking at advanced mitigation. If there's a way to preserve ag land that is in kind of key areas that wildlife are moving through, that helps the linkage, it helps the food economy. So it's kind of like layering the agriculture priorities with the wildlife priorities and seeing where there's the most synergy. And that's just going to be a planning process that happens as we implement the linkage.
Okay. And then,
Could I ask a
yeah,
follow-up question
please,
on that?
no, please do.
And Jerry, this may be you as well, is this report going to be presented to the implementation and governing board?
Yes. Yeah, we couldn't make it to September. Both me and my supervisor had another work event. So we're going to be on the January
Okay,
agenda.
No, because I think it's very important, because we have movers and shakers from the water district, from, the cities in the county on there, who, this is the kind of stuff that we can sell, planning for Coyote Valley and the, biodiversity and a 60-point headline.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Kind of to Walt's point, what about the Gavilan board? I mean, when we talk about what's in Coyote Valley right now, it's IBM and the Gav campus, which I really wish was modeled after Stanford's Jasper Preserve, but I can't have everything. So, are you intending on talking to the Gavilan board? Because this does work. I mean, we all knew that the Sobrato property that they got had some real sensitivity to it. Is there going to be a presentation and maybe just a matter of awareness to the Gavilan board where you guys are going and
Yeah,
having them
that's actually a
sensitive
really
to
good.
that?
That's a really good suggestion. I hadn't thought of that. I know we worked with them when they were trying to site their campus and seeing if we could help make some other land deal, happen, and it didn't work out. But I hadn't really thought about, now that we have this report, doing some additional outreach. So that's a really good suggestion.
and I've already written down 3 names and stars next to it, because, no, I'm on the Gavilan College Board, and it's, it's important that we be good stewards. Craig? In minutes, Angie, we do have Craig is with us now.
I reflected
Thank
that.
you.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
No, blame
One
it
of
on the
these-
traffic.
That you can't drive normal traffic at 6 o'clock from San Jose, but I'm not doing very good at that.
So go by Clara Reservoir. No, that's the only way to go after 2:30.
So I've been in contact with the Department of Conservation concerning the high-speed rail agricultural mitigation. And unfortunately, the mitigation is acres that do not have to be attached to where the impact is. And so there's the possibility of all of the mitigated acres could be in the Central Valley and 0 in Santa Clara County. And that's something that, I don't know if you're aware of that, and you are, okay. I did, that was a feedback that, because you had mentioned using some of the high-speed rail advanced mitigation for that. I guess if it were used for this study, they may be more amenable, but for agriculture, their dollars can go a lot further into Central Valley, and so they're very hesitant in Santa Clara County. I just want to make sure you were aware of that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And, the other challenge with linkages in general, and including high-speed rail mitigation, is always the focus being on covered species. And, mountain lions and bobcats and coyotes are not covered species. We're trying to conserve a landscape. And so that is a challenge with the high-speed rail mitigation as well. And so we have been working really closely with them, and they seem amenable to looking at property and, in Coyote Valley. So, I mean, they could change their mind, but so far they've been working with us on that.
Okay.
And if I may follow up on that, each jurisdiction who's had to work with high-speed rail makes their own requests, shall we say, above and beyond what the package high-speed rail offers. And I think if the jurisdictions in Santa Clara County, the county, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and San Jose particularly, obviously, would make the request jointly that any agricultural land that is affected in this county be preserved in this county. They can put weight behind it. I'm not saying that they can't, that it'll be observed, but it doesn't hurt if you don't make the ask, right? So that's something I would just put out there.
Well, and just a little follow-up on that it's not on the agenda, but we by consensus could suggest, and if you folks want, I do attend the governing board and the implementation, that in fact, that as well as the route itself is something that, this agency may want to weigh in on, but that wouldn't be, we could certainly present that as an idea.
Yeah, I think I would probably check in with, with Edmund first, because I know you guys have
submitted
conversations with high-speed rail.
Submitted comments to the county comments when they had comments on, I think it was the Gilroy train location.
The station
downtown
location, yeah,
location.
yes, yeah.
So our fears are kind of out there a little bit anyway, so we've had some comments, some public comments out.
Yeah, definitely the fears about how it will affect farmland, but I think, on the, like I said, the flip side of that, if that's to show that it's a priority to protect the farmland that we have left. I mean, that's obviously a big conversation being had, that we only have X amount left, and it's really important for us to do our best to preserve, that which is of highest and best value. So I don't see why it would hurt just to at least present it to the board. If nothing else, the board itself, as an agency, since it's a joint powers, may not, but they may bring that idea, or it may be suggested that maybe they bring those ideas back to their own individual jurisdictions for thought if the JPA is not interested in doing it as a body.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Our comments were primarily focused on design and trajectory, not so much on the land dedication. So I think that needs to be spelled out at some point.
Okay. And does anyone have any cautions or concerns about presenting that as an idea? Okay. Okay.
So I just want to commend the Open Space Authority, having been involved with them from the beginning. I was actually involved with De Anza College when they did some of the first studies out there. And as I was actually a student in the class, but I was recognizing at the time that the science that was being done, hello. Oh, okay. There we go. See, I got them. Movement.
You knew you came in for a reason tonight,
The science that was being done was better than nothing, but it was not as high level as it could be. And it's really good to see the high level of science being done on this to try to move it forward.
Thank you.
Just a real brief history on Coyote Ridge. It got started using science. It wasn't started as a land protection movement or anything like that. It was biologists getting out on the ground and doing the good science for discovering the bay checker spot butterfly. And then there's a whole story about how eventually it got there. So most protection that I have seen and been aware of at some point started with doing good, proper, legitimate science. And I'm glad to see this being done, because that's what was missing in moving this forward. So
Thank you.
kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a couple comments in regard to your question, Julie, about the Bobcat study. I mean, what I was lucky enough to see that presentation last week on the Bobcat study, and what I thought was really, really most fascinating is they kind of showed preliminary data for all the Bobcats that had been captured. And you could really see like the distinction of the territories between different Bobcats, and you could see like they would collect data every 5 minutes. So you could see meadows that were totally covered with dots, you know, where they're obviously kind of like hunting. And then you could see like specific locations where they'd cross Bailey or other roads. And, you know, or a bobcat that just kind of stayed right along Coyote Creek. So it's really, really interesting just to see information that was available about individual animals using the landscape. So I don't know if we ever have that again. It'd be really fascinating to see, just as a general interest. I did want to ask a question about these focal species that maybe is on your 8th slide. I was kind of curious about what you actually used that list of focal species for. But because like for us, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the bottom 5, burrowing owl to bay checker spot butterfly, and then tricolored blackbird are covered species, right?
They are. Mm-hmm.
So, but then you have a bunch of other ones that are kind of drive the landscape somehow. So how were these focal species used in this study?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we created a table in the back that kind of shows in the appendix. So what we did is we looked at the habitat requirements of the focal species, and then looked at the land that we had put in the landscape linkage design, and made sure that they were compatible. So we laid out the species, whether it was what we were providing was move through or live in habitat, what those requirements are, and sort of how they fit into the landscape linkage. And then, as I mentioned, we added a few species. Tricolored blackbird was one, and that was, a lot of it is the regulatory status. They're sort of like umbrella species for others. And the tricolored blackbirds came in because Laguna Seca could be a really great nesting location for them. They're already foraging in Coyote Valley. So if we were able to do some restoration. So also we looked at, as it is now, and then what it could be with restoration. So I would look at appendix. I think it's the first appendix that kind of lays that out.
I'll check that out. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments?
I have a question. On the, what interests me a lot is the crossing over the highways and such. And I noticed that in one of the appendix here, it appears that the looking at new culverts and overpasses are primarily on Monterey Highway and Santa Teresa, with some retrofitting of the those that exist on Highway 101. Does that mean that there isn't a need for more on Highway 101? It's just retrofitting some of them? Yeah,
that's a really good question. Highway 101 is permeable. It's not perfect, but there are a number of locations that animals are using. Monterey Highway has one culvert. It's at the Fisher Creek, Coyote Creek confluence. We did the 2016 Pathways for Wildlife study during the drought, and so animals were using it, and then the winters came. We weren't doing the study, so, at that point, so we don't know, but just going out there, it's pretty obvious that no animal would be able to use that, and it has that median, and so a lot of the roadkill is happening along Monterey Road, and there really isn't any way to get them safely across except for that culvert. We did lose one of our bobcat subjects, was hit on Monterey Road, actually very close to that culvert on July 1st, I believe, or July 2nd. We actually have camera data showing bobcats using the culvert, so even though a different bobcat that wasn't collared around the same time. So for one reason or another, it just decided to cross the road. So it shows that we need multiple opportunities for them to get across the highway.
Okay, and it's not that common to find the roadkill on 101?
Not as much. The on-ramps and the off-ramps do seem to have a lot of roadkill on there, but not as much as we're finding. Monterey Road has probably like 60 to 70% of the
Okay,
roadkill.
well, interesting, thanks.
Other comments, questions? Yeah, I have I do want to, thank you for the most informative and readable report. I mean, it's, I'm going to read it again.
Oh, thank you.
The question, though, about Coyote Creek flooding, and most recently, when the dam spills over, as it does sometimes. And I saw on TV, and still seeing on TV, the problems in San Jose. But what did that do to Coyote Creek as it goes through the Coyote Valley?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was flooding in Coyote Valley during this winter season, but I think what we're looking at is the volume of water that's going from Fisher Creek to Coyote Creek. So if you look at the historical ecology map, Fisher Creek actually didn't flow into Coyote Creek. And so
It does now.
it does now, yeah. And so if we can create a better riparian corridor that keeps more of the water to spread along the floodplain on Fisher Creek, then that reduces the flow going into Coyote Creek. So that's one of the ways that it can reduce the downstream flooding. I don't think we can prevent flooding in Coyote Valley. I mean, it's just the way the topography is, and the soils, and the channels as they are right now. It's going to flood, especially with climate change and more intense winter events and more intense droughts. We're going to see more of that. So what we need to do is look at ways to capture that water and to let it flood so it doesn't flow downstream to San Jose.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Doug, anything to say? Comments from the public? Okay, thank you. Then, Jerry, do you have anything on this that you'd like to say?
No, I've been kind of following this all along, and very happy with it. We're partnering with OSA wherever we can, looking for projects that are going to be coming up as a result of this. So yeah, we sit on the Wildlife Connectivity Corridor Working Meeting. So yeah, very happy about it. Very informative.
Okay, great. So then we will go on to the executive officer's report, and we do have a,
Thank you.
thank you. And we do have a summary in front of us.
Yeah, I went ahead and left you each a copy of Ed's notes. He's at a Conservation Lands Networks. He's a steering committee member, so he's been up there all day in Oakland and wasn't going to be able to make it down here in time. So he asked me to sit in. I know a few of you, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jerry Haas. I am with the Habitat Agency. I'm a conservation planner. I started there just a little under a year ago, so this month will be my first year there. It's great. I love the work, love the people I'm working with, enjoying the new position, and I appreciate that the work I'm doing is actually making a difference. And I'd also like to thank you for your commitment, because the success of the plan really is only going to become realized as a result of collective effort by everybody. So thank you all for your time, dedication as well. I'm just going to briefly touch on the subjects that Ed was going to discuss here. Start with the budget update. You can see the figures there. The fee revenue for fiscal year 16-17, just a little over $4 million. Our estimated, our estimated final expenses are going to be about $1 million less than that. So that's pretty good news. A big part of that is the fact that we're bringing in a lot of work in-house now, with Tara being hired and then next with me being hired. So instead of paying consultants those fees for a lot of that work, we're realizing some cost savings there. Tara and I manage meetings. We coordinate directly with our co-committees. Our database is now internal, so we're starting to manage that. And I write most of the interpretations and modifications for the plan now, so it's pretty clear to see the resulting impact of that doing that work in-house. And this does look promising because some of the larger projects that we anticipated revenue coming in from last fiscal year got pushed out. So this is going to be carried forward. We'll see some of those revenues coming in, maybe even see, I don't know that we're going to have that much of a difference, but it looks like we're going to have savings into the future next year as well. Next item he has down here to discuss is the regional general permit. I'm the administrator of the regional general permit, so when the permits come in, I'm the one who reviews them. We have now an in lieu fee program that we're having the Army Corps consider, and they seem to be okay with it. They just recently released a copy of our prospectus with a public notification, and sort of like CEQA, we'll look for comments from the public on this, but if there are no comments, then we just meet with the interagency review team. And then, then we prepare the instrument for the in lieu fee program, and if it is completed, it will finalize one of the outstanding requirements for the RGP program. It'll streamline the permit approval process for us, and it gets us one step closer to being kind of a one-stop shop for permitting. We've had 5 RGP applications come through. 3 of them have been approved already, and most of them can be done in about 2 to 2.5 months. So this is Section 404 permitting. Having been a planner in my previous life, I know that permitting can take up to a year, sometimes more than a year. So to get them done in a couple of months has been pretty significant change, and our committees are pretty happy with that. The last step to that would be rolling in 401 certification from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And they're on board with this. They're slowly considering this, but we're not pushing them. We just want them to kind of take it in, internalize it. But it's possible that our in lieu fee program would satisfy the regional board, Army Corps, and with the other 2 agencies already issuing us take permits, we could potentially be one of the first agencies that can oversee the streamlined permitting for all land development projects from state and federal agencies. It's a grand vision, but it's within our reach here, I think. Ed's got some land acquisition updates here for you. The first one, Pacheco Creek. The property has been deeded to the agency. This is that 55 acres along Pacheco Creek, where near its confluence with Harper Creek, I think. So basically, I think it's going through title, whatever the last final steps are in that process, but it's been deeded to us already.
That's just east of the Casa de Fruta?
Yeah,
Upstream
I
from
think
there?
it's about 13 miles outside of Gilroy, so 13 miles east of Gilroy. The Rancho El Toro, Walt, you wanted me to kind of talk about Pacheco Dam. That's the, we have an offer that we're preparing an offer for that project. The appraisal came back, and it's right about where we expected the appraisal to be. We'll be making an offer that's right around exactly what the appraisal is, and that's forthcoming. It could be happening anytime. I'm guessing probably in the next couple of months or so. But everything seems all right, that the property owners now are happy with us, and we're happy with them, and negotiations seem to be going pretty well. The Pacheco Dam on the property, the potential expansion of the Pacheco Dam means that the Water District wants to be a partner with us on this property, so they'll contribute some funds toward the purchase of the property. I know there was a lot of media about that, the acquisition of the property, and didn't really paint us in the best light, but I think what they missed was that this has been in the works for a long time. We've been looking at this property for years. It's not just because the Water District wants the property now that we decided to go in and buy the property. I think we all know that, but it didn't seem like it came out that way in the media. But the Water District will be a partner with us, and then if it turns out that they do not build the dam, we could just buy the property back from them. If they do build the dam, they'll use that for mitigation in the future. The dam, even if it is reconstructed and enlarged, probably only take up about 1,000 acres, I think, of the property, of the total 12,000 acre site. So it's not a huge loss for us, and it's not going to be affecting the expansion of the dam, would not affect some of the really important sycamore alluvial wetlands that are on the property. So,
Jerry, with the Water District as a partner, is that fulfilling part of their obligations of the VHA, or is that for other mitigation? Are they bringing in separate money from what they are required to have for VHA?
that's little bit beyond my scope here. I think probably some of it can be used for mitigation. Clearly, they want to establish much.
Separate from the
Right.
Habitat Agency.
The expansion of that property the expansion of the reservoir is going to create a lot of impacts. So they're going to need to offset that probably somewhere else. Purchasing and contributing to the property on site could go a long way toward mitigating for them, but they may even have to look to properties off-site as well. So in other words, when they expand that, they're going to be eating up a lot of property that's going to result in new impacts with the new, I guess, bathtub ring of the dam that's going to be built out there. So not quite sure exactly how that's going to work in terms of clearly we're happy to have them as a partner.
Yeah, right. I'm just wondering if that fulfills their obligations for the next 50 years, or...
I would think if they don't build the dam, that's probably true, because that's property that could be set aside as conservation, they could use for conservation, creation, not creation, but conservation. If they do build it, it's a different story.
Right, okay.
Any other questions on?
If they build the dam, is that the water stay on the El Toro Ranch, or do they have to get properties next to it?
No, I think it stays, it's pretty centrally located on the ranch, and so if they do build a dam up, it would stay entirely within the property itself.
Okay.
Beautiful piece of property, too. It's a really pretty piece of property. Okay, Clara conservation easement, we're still negotiating with county parks. This is kind of a delicate dance we have to do. Putting a conservation easement on a park means that their interests in recreation have to coincide with our interests in conservation, and so we're just sort of playing this out a little bit, but it looks like it's still going to happen. That'll be a little over 2,000 acres that we can enroll in our reserve system, so we're happy to see it move forward. And they pay land in lieu, so they haven't been giving us money for impacts. They kind of have to give us some of the property for conservation at some point, so it's just a matter of time before that plays out.
So just to remind me, the Calero and San Vicente is now considered one unit? Or is Calero separate from San
Calero's
Vicente?
separate. Yeah, that's Calero Park. Well, no, I'm sorry. San Vicente was just brought into Calero Park.
Okay, that's what I want.
Right, but I don't know if it's going to be part of the conservation easement. It should be. I mean, it's adjacent to it. Yeah.
It's got some of the best serpentine habitat
It's
in
a
the county.
beautiful piece of property too. I did the hike there, Lisa Kilo, her memorial out there. So I did the walk, and beautiful view of the valley on the other side up there. It runs directly adjacent to the pond restoration site, so my guess is it's going to be enrolled, that it is part of the enrollment. I just wasn't quite sure about that.
Right.
But could you make sure that's on Ed's radar too?
Sure, yeah. Okay. And then the final property here, I think, is UTC. This one's very interesting. It's just on the other side of the Coyote Ridge property. The negotiations, as Ed puts it here, have restarted. Their legal counsel is drafting up an agreement that we'll take a look at. Probably the biggest issue for that property is they would like to dedicate or transfer a portion of it to us, most of it to us, with a few little islands preserved for themselves. They have to remediate those sites. So we'll have this kind of little Swiss cheese property with some islands in it and some access easements that connect it. But it's a promising site with lots of sensitive habitat, and it adjoins, like I said, portions of Coyote Ridge up there, so it's pretty important for us. Acquiring the property would be a smart move for us.
And that's about 3,000 acres roughly? Something in that ballpark?
I think no, I think it's more than that. I'm sorry, I didn't get that figure down.
That's fine, I just thought you knew it.
Yeah, I think it might even be larger than that. But well, that's a pretty good size, 3,000. Maybe you're about right, because Coyote Ridge is about 12 or
Because
1,800.
I think the original UTC property was about 5,000, OSA got 1,800, so that would
Right,
be 30,
yeah, I think you're probably right.
3,200 roughly left.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've got the knowledge, so.
Well, I didn't know if there was more involved or just that UTC property.
It is just the UTC
Okay.
property. Okay, he's got a burrowing owl update on here. So this is, I guess, a lukewarm good news. For the 2 units that we're managing out there, they appear to be the only 2 units where population is not continuing to decline. So at the Warm Springs unit, they had 11 to 13, somewhere in there, adult owls, the last survey that was just done last month. with 7 chicks out there. And it doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not really a lot, but it's up from the single-digit birds that we had out there with the last report. So they're still quite in jeopardy of crashing without active management on that property. The regional water facility site's looking a little bit better. We had about 35 adults with the July survey, and 29 chicks. So the juveniles are actually starting to flap their wings and bounce around out there, and they're doing pretty well. And this is the highest figure we've had on that property since we began managing it back in October last year. And probably since before that too, for years before that, I think. So that's pretty encouraging for us. We don't know if they're going to continue to grow, expand or not, but they seem to be doing okay with the management that we're conducting out there. Keeping the grass short. We brought in straw bales that had been kind of infested with mice, and so we could bring them out there onto the properties and release them, and it kind of created a food base for the owls, and so I think they enjoyed that. They didn't voice their appreciation, but we think they did. The next item here is some restoration project updates. San Felipe Creek is being delayed. We're waiting on 401 certification, and I think the plan was get it done and be able to start work in the late summer, but it looks like that's going to be pretty difficult to achieve. We've resigned ourselves to just allowing the permitting to take its course through the winter, and we'll start up on San Felipe, that restoration of that creek, in the spring instead of this year, instead of this summer. The next project is Coyote Ridge Ponds. These are the 2 ponds that are up there high on Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. And it's roughly the same timeline. They're developing the plans right now. We've done surveys out there and a wetland delineation, and we'll probably have 35% design done sometime in the next month or 2. But the permitting and the final designs will take place again through the winter. What it means is we'll have 2 restoration projects that we'll be working on, one in the early part of the summer or late spring next year, and then the other one in the middle to the late summer. So we'll be building up a lot of credits toward our restoration goals.
The one on Coyote Ridge, is that a Habitat Agency 100% funded project, or is OSA kicking in on that too?
No, that's 100%.
That's yours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's my project, so I'm pretty excited about that. That's my fun project.
So where's San Felipe Creek?
San Felipe Creek is in Grant Park.
Okay.
So a little further up north, and I think it's about a half a mile of stream restoration, a lot of riparian creation, restoration as well, and then floodplain creation too. So it's kind of a good trial project for us. Streams are tough to work in, they're very expensive, but we do need to, I think our plan calls out for 10 miles of stream restoration over the 50-year permit term. We're going into 5 years, and we'd be lucky to have a half of a mile by the end of next year. So we need some bigger projects like this, and this is a good one to sort of cut our teeth on and get in there and see how well it goes. Pretty excited about it though. And then the final items that Ed had on here were key meeting updates. I couldn't tell you what was going on in those meetings. Those are all his meetings that he goes to.
I can comment on the third one,
He's a busy guy.
because I was there.
The third one there. Oh, Silk, yeah, that's you.
So the Land Conservancy has a conservation easement on a farm that's got the Pajaro River on one side and Carndale Creek on the other. And so I've approached the landowner about doing some restoration along both of those creeks, and we're still discussing that.
Okay.
Okay. So we're at the end of the agenda, and does anyone have anything to say?
Here's the one.
No. Here we go.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee members and staff. For the record, my name's Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. You just mentioned permitting problems with San Felipe Creek. Which agency is the permit coming from?
The problems, the 401 certification, so Water
Okay.
Quality Control Board.
Okay. So it reminded me, since you had some pretty good news about your in lieu fee program with the Army Corps, not all that long ago, the Army Corps brought in a new leader Tori White from Florida to work on getting permits moving again in this area. And as I recall, this agency and the Water District were pretty impressed with her, pretty happy with the work. We hope that she was putting in place procedures that would continue that positive nature after she left. Can you say anything about our experience with the Army Corps and permits since she left?
Sure, yeah, the Army Corps permitting has gone great, actually, with our regional general permit. That's what I mentioned earlier. The streamlined review has been pretty helpful. We got hung up on a couple of projects. That was really just a matter of getting to know what they need to see in their applications, filling out these applications properly, making sure they have all the correct information. But they've been great to work with. Yeah, no problems.
And no one can say that.
I don't think anyone can say that. It takes a regional general permit, and it's constant, I don't want to say nagging, but you know, they commit themselves to a 15-day initial review of these 404 applications so we do a screening for them. We pass them on, they do a 15-day review. After that, they give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. It's either got everything or it's not, completeness determination. After that, it's supposed to be 30 days. And so if it goes a little bit longer than that, it's usually because it's not complete. There's discussions about fish, or the cultural resource issue isn't completely resolved, or something like that. So if I can work harder on my end to make sure that the applications have everything they need, and I'm beginning to know what it is they need now, it should shorten those timelines for review considerably in the future.
I have one quick question I meant to ask. It's not directly related to the Cowley Valley corridor study, but there were 2 burrowing owls found in the Cowley Valley OSP that potentially were breeding because they were there very late. Can you give us an update on what happened to those guys? Did they leave, or was there any breeding that happened with them? Do you know, Gally?
They weren't actually able to come out and do the summer surveys, so that wasn't one of the sites that the researchers had chosen. And Lynn Trulio was going to have her class come and do a volunteer project, but then she injured herself this summer, and so we haven't seen them, but that doesn't mean that they're not there, so we need to do summer surveys.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you. I lead hikes up on there a lot, and I'm always talking about them, and then I don't know whatever happened to them, so okay. Wow.
Okay, thank you. So our next meeting will be Thursday, 6 p.m. on November 2 here. Angie, are we good to go? Done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.